and welcome to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast. My name is Jesse, and I'll be your host. So on today's episode, we're going to get back at a man and plot his demise because he's been cheating on all of us. And we're also going to, I guess, go out on a boat with him because we're trying to have him fall in love with us and all that. But anyway, regardless of all that, today's episode, we're going to be covering 2006's John Tucker Must Die. Now, in this movie in particular, I hadn't really watched it before, really. It came out in 2006. This was peak, like, high school for me because I started high school in this year. I remember the kind of marketing of this movie, or at least kind of remember it in my general universe, I guess, because it was targeted to teens. It was a PG-13 movie, so of course. But I never really had watched it, but I did see that there were people who had reacted to it years later on YouTube. I was like, oh, well, okay, like this movie is out there. And I wonder, just watching those reactions and kind of getting bits and pieces of what the movie was, I was like, all right. But then I decided to watch the movie myself because it came on Stars, I think it was. I was like, all right, well, let me go and watch this, I guess, for the first time. And I watched it. And also, this is a movie that I'll talk a little later, but it was directed by Betty Thomas, who we've covered on the podcast before with the Brady Bunch movie. So I thought, and of course, she's, done Private Parts with Howard Stern. She was in Troop Beverly Hills, as an actress. And I just thought, like, all right, well, I'll give this movie a shot because I don't really know what to think of it, really. And so in this situation, though, like, I will say that just my general thoughts, I guess, are this movie in particular, I think, suffers from not great writing. But I do think that the performances in it aren't terrible or anything. I think I love a Brittany Snow movie, of course. And I think like Ashanti and like Sophia Bush and Arielle Kebbel, I think they do a good job, in the film. They're not bad or anything. I just think the writing's kind of weak, really. And it was directed by a woman and then written by a man. And you can kind of tell, honestly. And so I think like this movie kind of doesn't have the messaging's all over the place, I think, with it. But I think overall it's a movie that was targeted at teens, and I think it has kind of garnered a certain cult classic feel to it because it's a movie that is very much like cool to kind of see these girls get together and want to plot to take down this guy who is kind of three-timing all of them, and to let him get a piece of his own medicine, if you will, I guess. Yeah, I think overall, though, I see why this movie maybe didn't do great in the critical response, because I don't think Betty Thomas did a bad job directing. I don't think. I think it's the page, what's on the page is what the issue was. But anyway, and this was suggested by a friend of the show, Barbie. Love you, Barbie. Be on the lookout. She might be coming on the show, so we'll tease that a little bit. But yeah, she suggested this to me when I asked, like, hey, she's been coming in with the suggestions, which I love. And because I had watched it, I was like, all right, let me cover it. I think that would be fun. And again, I think it's an interesting little teen movie that is a little different than what this is. Definitely influenced by something like Mean Girls, of course, but I think it tries to have its own voice and it only gets so far there. Do you know what I mean? So, but without further ado, though, we're going to move into some figures of the movie, move into a little bit about production history, and then we'll move into a plot summary of the film. So let's get on with those figures. So John Tucker Must Die was released on July 28th, 2006, and was directed by Betty Thomas, written by Jeff Lowell, and produced by Bob Cooper and Michael Birnbaum. We're looking at an estimated budget of about $18 million and a gross US and Canada box office of $41 million or so. And we're looking at a gross worldwide box office of $68,844,775. And we're looking at a Rotten Tomatoes score of a 27% on the tomato meter and a 69% audience score. We're looking at a 5.7 out of 10 on IMDb and a Letterboxd score of 3.0 out of 5. For our cast of characters, we have Brittany Snow as Kate Spencer, Jesse Metcalfe as John Tucker, Ashanti as Heather Montgomery, Sophia Bush as Beth McIntyre, Arielle Kebbel as Carrie Schaefer, Penn Badgley as Scott Tucker, Fatso Fasano as Tommy, Jenny McCarthy as Lori Spencer, Patricia Drake as Coach Williams, Taylor Kitsch as Justin, Kevin McNulty as the basketball coach, Amber Borican as Jennifer, Megan Ori as Jill, Greg Sipes as Guy at Party, Samantha McLeod as Holly, Nicole LaPlaca as Molly, and the band People in Planes as themselves. Some critical response quotes about John Tucker Must Die are as follows. We have Mike Sage from the Petersboro This Week, who states Betty Thomas's sloppy storytelling and comic incompetence can be forgiven, but to portray young women as flighty airheads obsessed with boys all over else is downright offensive. We then have Linda Cook from the Quad City Times in Davenport, Iowa, who states, here's an average teen movie with a predictable but often entertaining spin on revenge. And then we have Betty Jo Tucker from Real Talk Movie Reviews, who states this one suffers from a bad case of predictability. It's also hard to believe, mostly because cast members look too old to be high school students. So before we move into any kind of a plot summary about John Tucker Must Die, I wanted to go over just some production history that I thought was kind of interesting about this film exactly. So I found this information from MadeInAtlantis.com, so I'm going to be pulling from that. But the idea of John Tucker Must Die came from the screenwriter Jeff Lowell when he was entertaining his own romantic revenge fantasies. He says, quote, I came to the conclusion that all heartbreak begins in the formative teenage years and started thinking about my own high school, where there was the big man on campus that every girl drooled over, including my girlfriend. Even back then, I realized there was nothing I could do about it. You can't define yourself by who you're dating. And then I thought about the popular girls at school, who they were and how they acted. And I remembered how every clique had a leader, and no matter what the group represented, the hottest one was always in charge. Even the smart girls, quote unquote, deferred to the prettier girl to lead them, even if she wasn't particularly smart. With these memories of his in mind, he set out to write the script that would eventually become John Tucker Must Die. So then this screenplay ended up finding its way to producer Bob Cooper, who was the former president of both HBO and TriStar Pictures and was the ex-production head of DreamWorks, and he now runs Landscape Entertainment, or at least at the time of this article. Bob Cooper's quoted as saying is that when I first read the script, I thought, wow, it's got all the ingredients. It was breezy, fun, and comedic, but it also had a relatable theme, which to me is the most critical thing. It's about how everyone in high school pretends to be something that they're not, just to have some kind of acceptable identity. This, of course, makes it hard for anyone to know who anyone really is. It's a vicious cycle. And so, in about 9 months of Cooper bringing the script to 20th Century Fox, they gave the green light on John Tucker Must Die. And Cooper is quoted as saying, they saw what I saw in it, a big fun movie. They just needed a director to actually execute it. And that enters Betty Thomas, who directed the Brady Bunch movie, Private Parts, Dr. Dolittle, was an actor in her own right. Cooper is quoted as saying that Betty has a very specific vision for the film, and she wanted it to be more than just your typical fast-cutting MTV-style youth movie. And she was obsessed with giving John Tucker a design, an aura, an energy all its own. I always found her an extraordinary framer of comedy and knew her work would be no exception. So Betty Thomas also was intrigued by the script. She said that the story felt fresher and more real than the average romantic comedy. And I felt like I had never done a film like this, one that's about finding out about the world of romance, how it affects you, what it means. And I love the idea of exploring all the games that go into having a relationship, real or fake. And so they had to go out and cast the movie. So rising star at the time, Brittany Snow, was brought on to play Kate, the new girl in school who is giving John Tucker kind of a taste of his own medicine. She had been on American Dreams and also in the movie The Pacifier by this point. And Brittany Snow is quoted as saying, I really, really identified with Kate. I'd never read a script where I felt a part was so me. And she also thought that it'd be a great chance to play the underdog, because it's not often that these characters get to play the lead. So in this way, I guess she's seen as the underdog, which in a way in the beginning, she definitely is. Brittany goes on to say that Kate and I had very similar experiences. We both moved around a lot during school. We're both kind of dorky. I identified with her quirks and how, as more of the quiet observer type, she was constantly just being overlooked. And kids in high school just don't take the time to notice people that are a little under the radar. And for the role of John Tucker, they decided to cast a gentleman who had just made a mark in TV on Desperate Housewives, Jesse Metcalfe, who he was the gardener on that show. And so Bob Cooper said we needed an actor who didn't only just look the part, but also could play basketball. And Jesse knew his way around the hoops and liked to do his own stunts, and he really fit the bill. And Betty Thomas even says that Jesse is so easy to respond to. He's attractive, charming, relaxed, and athletic, but he also makes you feel at home, like you're the only person in the room. And that's John Tucker's greatest strength as to why all these girls respond to him. Once I realized that Jesse didn't even have to really audition, he just was the one. So yeah, that's what happened with that. So Jesse Metcalfe says that I definitely wasn't John Tucker in high school. He was more of an alternative kid who was into music and dyeing his hair different colors. He kind of marched to his own beat. You know, he wasn't popular enough to be in really any clique, but he had like one real good friend, and it was probably just like a little reclusive. And so it was kind of a nice little stretch for him to take in this situation. But, you know, he knew that it was really careful to play someone like John Tucker because it's a really easy role to turn into a caricature. And, you know, I think he wanted to do something a little bit different with that. So thought that was cool. And then a trio of young actresses to, you know, play his ex-girlfriends. So like Arielle Kebbel, who had been in Aquamarine, she was hired to play Carrie. She talks about how this is the kind of girl a guy would want to bring home to his parents. Then you have Ashanti, who had just been in Coach Carter at the time. She was chosen to play the head cheerleader, Heather. And she says, ironically, she was a cheerleader in high school and belonged to a clique. So, you know, her and that character kind of shared some similarities. And then, of course, Sophia Bush, who had just been on One Tree Hill, and that ended up turning into a really big success. She was cast as Beth, the vegan environmentalist. And she liked how it looked at how men modify their behavior to be with women and the lies that they tell to keep them interested. And she also said the script said a lot about friendship, how boyfriends come and go, but friends are forever. And that's a really great message, and she wanted to be a part of it. And then as the main adult in the film, they chose Jenny McCarthy, because why not? She's always played these kind of characters that are kind of wacky and comedic. So for her to be able to play this was a little bit of a different thing. And of course, Jenny McCarthy, you know, why not? I don't agree with Jenny McCarthy's views on vaccines and how to cure autism, but okay, whatever. You know, she's still kind of fun. But principal photography for this film began in Vancouver, so this is a Canadian film. Why do you think Shailene Simmons is there? But most of this movie was shot there. And so, yeah, but this is actually set in the Pacific Northwest, though. So the decision to shoot in Vancouver really worked out, though. And during the location scout, a little happy accident happened. So during this time, so they found Heritage Woods Secondary School, which would become the fictional high school. And so this was like in Vancouver, and it had been built with an eye to the future and in response to all the housing developments. So it just so happened that like it worked out to be like a pretty cool high school. It had all the elements that they needed and then some. It offered some different looks that they needed. And as they were shooting over the summer, they were able to use the empty auditoriums as stages. So it kind of helped them save a little bit, I think, too, as well, which is kind of cool. So the school and its grounds were converted into 30 different fully dressed sets, including the library, the science room, the gym, the cafeteria, the hallway, the locker room, the war room, the track, and the parking lot, along with Kate's bedrooms and 6 different kitchens. So they literally used this school for what it was. And they were able to like offload their equipment stored in classrooms, come back next morning and everything would be right there. And it was really efficient to work there, which was kind of cool. I didn't even know that. Betty Thomas wanted to keep it really real. So using a more modern looking building really fit into there. And this is Marsha Hines saying this. It looks exactly how new suburban high schools looked nowadays. It's no longer the red brick and little desks. You know, it was something that was, it was a little bit more visually inventive, which was a challenge for, you know, a stark concrete and wood structure. And so they really wanted to make sure that they transformed this place as well. They chose like maroon, burgundy, and gray to kind of be the school's colors. And they also used actually the existing team of the school, the Kodiaks. So that's actually what the mascot was. So it kind of fit together, really. And again, it's just really cool that they used the school like this. And it saved them time and money, really. And so when the kids came back in September, the entire school was professionally decorated, which was really cool. So, I mean, if anything, I feel like this movie, you know, it was definitely targeted to girls on MySpace, because I think that's why they had that kind of like big push for teen girls to watch this, of course. And I mean, it ended up doing fine in the financials, I guess, and the critics, I don't really think a whole lot of them loved it. But I think if anything, Again, I think the big thing about this movie is that I don't think the directing was that bad, but I do think the writing could have been a little bit better. When I think about it too, with someone like Jeff Lowell, he had really only written TV before this. This was his first like feature film, really. He went on to do like, Hotel for Dogs and Over Her Dead Body and stuff like that. So, I mean, not to say I don't know if he, maybe is the strongest writer, perhaps, but again, I think this movie does squarely fit into some sort of kind of cult classic type of thing. It's just one of those like mid 2000s teen girl movies, that I think is kind of fun for what it is. Maybe doesn't have the best messaging sometimes. It's a little bit mixed, but it is cool to see these chicks, together and taking out a guy and trying to teach him a lesson. And I think that's always really interesting. So why not? But without further ado, though, we're going to move into a plot summary of John Tucker Must Die. So we begin our film where we have our intro to Kate, who's played by Brittany Snow, and we learn a little bit about who she is and how she's kind of like this invisible person. She's always kind of been kind of an outsider, if you will, as if we're supposed to believe that Brittany Snow is somehow like ugly or like not a popular person, but okay, whatever. But that's our intro to Kate, right? So we see her, and then we also meet her mom, Lori, played by Jenny McCarthy. I have opinions about Jenny McCarthy because I don't understand how she thinks that vaccines made her son autistic, but whatever. Anyway, but she's in this movie and she plays her mom, and what we learn pretty much is that Lori has had some not great luck with men, I guess, and Kate even talks about how like she has a very mature way of dealing with it where it's just her eating chocolate frosting, which I thought was very funny. Anyway, so we then get a little bit of an intro to this idea of Skip. And this is a fun little name that Kate has given the guys that come into her mom's life, pretty much, because she never actually learns their names because she just calls them Skip because they just end up leaving. And we then have our intro to John Tucker, who's played by Jesse Metcalfe in this movie. So Kate's pretty much the new girl in school, and so this movie's not really about like her, I guess, like how she's our narrator of the movie, but it is about John Tucker and talking about who John Tucker is, how he's like this, really popular guy. He's the captain of the basketball team. He's the most popular guy in school and all this stuff. This is Jesse Metcalfe coming off of Desperate Housewives, where he was literally having an affair with one of the housewives as the gardener. So we then have our intros to each respective girlfriend. And this is all happening at a basketball game too. So we have Carrie, who's played by Arielle Kebbel, who had been in Aquamarine. She was a model, all that. And she is like this type A student journalist. She's like kind of a broadcast journalist person or whatever at the school. That's who she is. We have our intro to Heather, played by the one and only Ashanti, Rain on Me, and, all the songs. She is the head cheerleader of the cheerleading squad of the Kodiaks, which is the team that John is on, and is actually the real life team of the school that they shot at, which is kind of fun. And then we see, well, we don't really learn her name, but we have Sophia Bush is here. We end up finding out her name is Beth, but I swear to God, like, literally you don't know her name until, like, 20 minutes into the movie, I swear to God. But anyway, so like she is like this vegan environmental activist. She holds up with her friends like this. It's like this banner that says "Chicks for Chicks. I am not a nugget" or something. It's so weird. She's like, kill the bobcats, not real bobcats because they're endangered, which is very kind of fun. But that's kind of like our opening part of the movie. So we get a little bit about Kate and her mom and how their relationship, or how her mom's relationship with men has been, and kind of how she feels about that. We also have Taylor Kitsch in here. He plays the neighbor guy who's bringing over some cookies or something like that, and that's where we meet Lori, the mom, because her mom is very hot, Jenny McCarthy. So the guy who's coming over with the cookies like is all enamored with her mom and all that. So So then we have Kate is at work. So again, she's moved around because of her mom and this whole thing. Not like mermaids, I guess, but like still just like this, her mom moves every so often. So she doesn't really get to have a whole lot of, she doesn't get to set up roots anywhere, I guess. And we have Kate who's at work. So she works at a restaurant. And so she's there. And then what she finds out though is, because John is there and he's brought one of the girls, Carrie, who is like speaking French to him a little bit. And he's like, oh God, you're so sexy when you speak French. Then Kate sees that Heather is with him and then that Beth is with him. And so she finds out that John has these 3 girlfriends that he has brought to the same place. He puts on these different kind of personalities with each one, So for example, with Heather, like he just orders for her, and all that. And then like with Beth, he acts like he's like really environmentally conscious and all this. So we then have, Kate's there and she's with her coworker, played by Shalane Simmons. This movie is very Canadian. I wish they threw Catherine Isabel in here. You know how I feel about her. But Shalane Simmons, she was in the 2002 remake of Carrie. She's in this movie. She was in Final Destination 3, as one of the girls who's burned up in the tanning bed. But she also is the little girl from the beginning of the It miniseries back in the 90s. She's the one that, spoiler alert, but Pennywise kills in the beginning. That is not Georgie. But anyway, so then we find out that, this is how we find out that like John Tucker just dates girls from different groups so that they never run into each other. And Kate's all like, like, how do you know all this stuff? And then she's like, just a guess, because obviously like she has been taken advantage of by John Tucker before. And I hate how Shalane Simmons does not have a name in this movie. She's just known as Crying Waitress in the credits. That's kind of shady. But anyway, so then we have the penultimate song of this movie, which is Dirty Little Secret from the All-American Rejects. And I love me some All-American Rejects, but yes, this song is peak 2006 and it's like really fun. And of course, like it goes along with this fucking movie. Oh my gosh, hilarious. But anyway, but John's like walking around the school. He's like kind of checking in on each of his girls' friends that he has. And, we end up finding out that he's walking up the stairs of the school, and then we have one of the coaches coming down the stairs, and somehow, some way, she ends up having a mild heart attack or whatever. And so what ends up happening is that the first and second period gym classes had to be mixed together, and so they have obviously the other coach just like almost died, so then they have the other coach that's there. I don't remember the coach's name, but it's played by she's played by Patricia Drake, who is like a voiceover actress for those people who are like the Saved movie. She's actually the mom of Dean in that movie that's in the beginning, which I thought was kind of fun. They're going to be doing this volleyball game, right? I also like how there's the goths in this. There's like these goth people in it. It's like very funny. Like one of them says like my name's Lucretia or whatever. It's like really silly. But anyway, they have this game of volleyball though, and so they're playing volleyball back and forth, and then I believe it is Carrie who says something about how she's dating John Tucker, because she's like whispering it, and then Heather overhears this and like pretty much hits Carrie with the ball. And then what ends up happening pretty much is that they get into this fight. So all 3 of these girls who all are saying like, I'm dating John Tucker, no, I'm dating John Tucker, and whatever, they're all like getting to a fight with one another. And then Kate gets up in there and she's like, you guys this guy is like two-timing you guys, and like you're beating each other up. And then so of course what ends up happening, because they're all because like you get like the one use of shit in this movie or something, and of course the gym teacher's like, language, and then what ends up happening is they all have detention then. So then the girls end up going to detention, but before that though, because Brittany Snow gets to detention first, but she then ends up meeting Scott. That's what we know his name to be right now. And this is played by the one and only Penn Badgley from, now he's in You, but he was in this movie, Easy A couple different movies back in the day. I didn't mean to rhyme, but I did. But anyway, so we find out actually pretty early that Scott is John Tucker's younger brother, technically. And so, but he's like singing "I Want You to Want Me" like off key or whatever. And so this is how they have their little meeting with him and Kate. I like how she says the one line where she's just like, I want to be early to be detained or something. It's very, very silly. But anyway, so detention then starts. So Scott leaves, and so they're talking to one another. And so, because again, they don't know each other like that, so they don't think anything of one another, but they're talking to one another. But they all find out that John Tucker obviously has dated all of them, but then what they end up finding out is that each one of them has been told the same shit over and over from John. And so this kind of pisses them off anyway, because before then, maybe they were just like, oh no, I'm dating him. No, I'm dating him. But now they're knowing like, oh, he's actually just played all of us pretty much. They find that out, and then Kate puts her kind of outside perspective into this, where she's just like, well, I'm not going to like, fight somebody. I would want to get even with them, and so they're kind of just like, who is this girl though? Like, who the hell is she? But she seems to have like this understanding of how men are. And, she's gotten this because of her mom and her own kind of like experience with that. But then Kate comes home and she's in her room, and then I think her mom like comes in and is like borrowing an outfit of hers or something like that. And what ends up happening, because her mom says like, you have a friend at the door, and so this is Carrie at the door, and like she comes in, and what ends up happening is that all three of the girls come over to her house. They just found her house somehow, and they end up devising this plan. And pretty much the plan is that they're getting together to try to figure out how to bring down John Tucker. So like that's kind of the idea that they have. They think of it at her house of like, okay, what do we got to do? We have to like, what can we do? Like, what made you interested in John Tucker? Because then they actually get together at, I guess, the media immersion room. I just pulled out like a Degrassi term there, but like, they get together in like wherever the hell Carrie takes them in the school. And they're trying to figure out how to bring down John Tucker. And so what they decide, and what they kind of come to the realization of, is that, all right, well, this guy is like really attractive, and he is, obviously been two-timing everybody, right? But how do we make him, what's the worst thing we could do to him? And instead of killing him, I guess, I don't know why this movie is called John Tucker Must Die, but okay. They decide, okay, well, we have to make him undateable. For somebody who's really attractive and can kind of have their pick of the bunch, right? What do you do to ruin that for them? And it's pretty much to make them undateable. So I think we have Beth, who has a photo shoot happen with John. And so this guy is taking pictures of John. And I'm just saying, like, Jesse Metcalfe looks really good. I mean, he was of age at this time. Don't want to make it weird because they are supposed to be in high school. I do think that this would have probably worked a little bit better if it was in college, kind of. I think it would have been more interesting, but, I didn't fucking make this movie. But anyway, so they have this photo shoot, though, and it's fine, all dandy. He's just like, okay, whatever, I guess I'll do it. And what ends up happening is that he then takes this girl out to the movies, and he's at the movies with this girl. And then I think the other girls, the gang, if you will. I love using the term the gang, the kids, whatever. They end up, I guess, going to the movies too, or they're kind of scoping out what this is. And John goes to the movies with this lady, and there's like the little kind of ads before not the trailers, but like the ads that show up before the movies or whatever, which was a thing and still is a thing, I guess. But anyway, there's this ad that comes up with John and be like, oh, that's kind of fun, but it ends up being that it's about it's about herpes is what it is. And that herpes is no laughing matter or whatever, and be like, I have it too or whatever. So it makes it seem like, oh, this guy has herpes, and so it like skeeves out the girl that he's on the date with and all that kind of stuff. And they think like, okay, cool, like, they're ruining his life, they're ruining his image and whatever. But then he ends up spinning it, and he ends up, because of, I don't know, misogyny or whatever the hell, I don't have any idea, but or patriarchy, I don't know, but like he ends up spinning it, and he becomes a damn hero, where he wins the Teen Responsibility Awards, where even though he himself doesn't have herpes, whatever, he has like he just ends up getting this spun around where he's able to make something positive of it. And then of course you have the girl on stage who has the facial herpes or whatever, and they tries kissing him and he doesn't want that because of course, but why not? But anyway, so then they're like, all right, well, that didn't work. God damn it. Like, what the hell? So then they come over again, though. And this is where I think they meet her mom, Kate's mom, because, you know, they're like, hey, girls, what are you up to? And then they're like ruining a man's life and be like, oh, well, play nice, girls. And of course, they get like the Diet Coke out of the, you know, the good, wonderful Diet Coke out of the fridge, and they're drinking it. But anyway, so then they devise this other plan. So what ends up happening is they're trying to think, okay, well, that didn't work with the herpes thing, so now we got to think of another plan. And so the other plan that they think of is actually conceived when they find out Heather is like taking estrogen pills to try to get a cup size bigger or something like that. And they're like, I don't think that's how that works, though. But anyway, because her mom, she's been taking her mom's estrogen pills or whatever. They decide, like, you know, okay, well, what else can we do to John? Be like, well, what would be worse for someone like John Tucker? You know, if he's like this masculine man, you know, or whatever, what is more scary to a man than not being manly, I guess? And so what they decide is that they are going to put estrogen into his like muscle powder he drinks or something or whatever. So they get a bunch of this estrogen pills, powder, whatever the hell, and they throw it into his like muscle powder he drinks, while also a cover of Hit Me With Your Best Shot is like playing too. Which is, they have some fun little covers in this as well. They have this one and a couple other ones that come up. But anyway, so he unknowingly gets this estrogen put into his like muscle powder or whatever he's drinking. And Heather says something to him about like, you know, you're looking real lean. Like, you know, the lean looks for some guys, but I think you definitely need to bulk up. So you need to drink more of it. And so that was like fun and dandy. We then have chem class with Scott and Kate, where they have their little continuation of their meet cute, if you will, I guess, like that, you know, where they get to kind of have more of a deeper connection, if you will, but like not really, though. It's just very surface level. It's chem class, and it's also showing off that like Kate is supposed to be like smart, and like, you know, this is again why she's not like this popular person, but like, you know, it's just to show this other side of her, and, you know, also trying to maybe have this relationship or beginning to have this with Scott. Then they have the basketball game actually going on, and so what ends up happening is John progressively through the game, he like, for example, like, of course, like with basketball, you're kind of running up against each other, right? And so he's like, dude, like, stop, like, you know, my nipples are sensitive, and all this kind of stuff. He just gets like super emotional because I guess he's on estrogen, and of course estrogen makes you fucking emotional, I guess, but okay. But anyway, so like, yeah, like it ends up happening of like, what ends up happening is that, like, you know, he's just like out of the game, and he's just like, it's always about me, it's always about John, you know, because the coach is like kind of riding him a little bit, and then he just like ends up running off of the court, which is just very kind of silly, I guess, really. And so he runs off that court. I also think, like, in a weird way, I don't know how, like, I mean, Jesse Metcalfe is like, he's a dude, but like, I don't know, like, I kind of wonder, I'm just like, it could have been really funny, because I also listened to another podcast who covered this movie, Sleepover Cinema. They're two sisters who cover teen movies of the 2000s, and, you know, they did an episode on this, and I listened to their episode a little bit, and they made an interesting point that I kind of get into, or that I kind of like a little bit, which I thought would have been a little funny, is if like John Tucker ended up being gay, because I could see it in this movie a little bit. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Like, I'm kind of like, okay, all right. And it would have been funny for Jesse Metcalfe to do that too, of just being like, oh, that would have been kind of fun. Again, I'm a gay, so I take it whatever you want to say, I guess. But like, that would have been kind of funny if that was his kind of like arc or whatever. It kind of would have it would have been bad. But anyway, so the girls think that John has been ruined after this, right? They think like, you know, oh, okay, like we showed him, right? Like, ooh. But then what ends up happening is that a bunch of hot girls end up throwing themselves at John Tucker because he's like emotionally, stable and available and like all of this. Also, I will point out that one of the hot girls that he comes across is Nikki Klein, who if you don't already know, she is literally, I think, still a part of, I actually haven't watched the second season of it, but it was a part of the Nexium cult that was a thing. She, along with Allison Mack, who I think she knew because they're both Canadian. But anyway, she was in that cult, and she still, I think, might be a follower of Keith Raniere, I guess. But yeah, that's the whole thing. Anyway, but before that, she was in this movie. She was also in Saved, if you didn't already know that. She was in the Godflight band. Like, she was actually in there too, because I think that was definitely done in Canada. I talked about it, but yeah. But I just thought that was really, watching it, I was just like, oh, that's that lady. Okay. I was watching the second season of The Vow, and I think she's in it. She talks about it a little bit, but anyway, or she talks about being in the group or whatever. But back to the movie. So what ends up happening though is that John, I guess he hasn't had it yet, but like he has all of these girls like kind of throwing them at themselves, right? And so what ends up happening is that he respectively breaks up with all three of these girls, and they're just like, well, fuck, like that didn't help. Damn it. What do we do now? So what ends up happening is the girls, they come over to Kate's house and they're like pigging out after they got broken up with. And so this is where because they're pigging out and whatever the hell. And they then decide to hatch this plan of like, well, what can we do? Like everything we've tried to like take him down hasn't worked. And, well, he broke up with all of us, like, how are we supposed to do anything? And then I think it's Carrie who says, not all of us. And so then this is where they kind of have this idea, very teen girl movie of it, to decide that they're going to take the girl who is maybe considered different than them and make her over or do something to like make her someone different, if you will. And I put in my notes, I'm like, Brittany Snow is supposed to be ugly, ? I think I mentioned that earlier, but like, I was like, yeah, no, are we supposed to believe that like, I don't know, I guess Brittany Snow is supposed to be a different kind of character than the other three of these girls. So I just was like, oh, okay, but like, so they have to like, they don't do like a makeover montage, but like still, I'm just like, okay, so you just have to make her a different person, I guess, so that John would be interested in her, and then you can fuck with him that way. So that's kind of like where that's where this turns a little bit as well. So that's kind of the rest of the movie for us in this situation. So after her, change of everything, Kate joins the cheerleading squad, at the behest of Heather. And so what ends, replacing one of the girls on the cheerleading squad who has a sprain. And she promptly just falls and fumbles because she's not that. That's not who she is. But then in the middle of this, though, John ends up seeing Kate and is intrigued by her. But Heather, of course, is like, well, it's not going to happen. She's not in high school, boys. I mean, who else would she be into? She's supposed to be underage, but okay, whatever. Anyway, so then we end up having a little bathroom meeting, which I thought was very funny because it's like her and Heather. So it's Kate and Heather, and they have this meeting with the rest of the girls who just so happen to be in the bathroom at the same time as them. So I thought that was kind of funny, actually. What ends up happening is that they decide, have you even done, I thought you said you had experience with these kinds of guys. Be like, have you ever dated anybody? Like, they kind of get down to this. And she's like, well, my mom has dated guys like this, so I have an understanding of it, but I myself haven't. And, are we doing this like a little bit soon, or are we doing this where she's getting in over her head? But they're like, you know what? Well, no, like, we can make this work, and so they end up making it work. So John ends up asking Kate out. But she rebuffs him because that's what she's been told to do. Like, they tell her, for example, like, don't do this, da-da-da. One of the things that I think Carrie says is like, before you answer a question he asks you, wait 3 seconds in your head before you respond to him. And then, of course, they have to throw in the R slur in here as well because it's 2006, baby. But anyway, so then... yeah, but she is asked out by John, but she rebuffs him again because she's kind of told to, pretty much. And then what ends up happening is that she's back in chem class, I think, or something like that. And they end up, John sends a bunch of flowers to her, because it's like one boy who's giving her a flower, and then it's like a bunch of other boys coming in to give her flowers, and then he's like talking over the loudspeaker or something like that, because he's like doing this like thing of like he's interested in her and he wants her to see that, I guess. But then the girls meet up and they find out about what Carrie is doing. So she's actually, because she's the video girl, she's the video journalist, she is documenting pretty much the downfall of John Tucker. That's what she's been doing. As part of this, we see that Carrie has Kate give a message to John, which ends up being pretty much like, there's only one kind of guy in the world for me, John Tucker, but you aren't him or whatever. And they have her do it a couple different times, and all that. Because it's supposed to be like, ooh, she really told him, right? Then I see that John and Scott, they meet up because they're brothers. And so John is asking, like, you're lab partners with Kate, right? Like, what's her deal? Like, what's she about? And of course, Scott's talking about, like, well, yeah, she's deep, man. She listens to this. She listens to obscure podcasts. Good girl. But, she's like a different type of person. I don't know if you can really get into that. And of course, John says, like, I could be deep. Like, I'm dating the poetry club, which I thought was kind of fun. But what ends up then happening is that, again, from John, he then asks Kate out to the beach, I believe. It's like a kind of lake beach area or whatever that they have, I guess. And so she then accepts because she decides, okay, well, I got to do this at some point, right? And so then what ends up happening is that the girls, they're like, all right, well, okay, this is happening. So they end up setting up a camera in like Kate's bra, I think it is, so that, they're able to kind of document this whole thing, right? And so then Kate and John, they end up going to the beach that they are saying they're going at. They end up going there, and again, it's kind of this nice thing where John is like showing that he's like interested in her, and of course, like, she's told like by the other girls, she's like, you got to make sure, like, you keep this in mind, keep that in mind, don't let yourself fall too hard, You have all this going on. You see that they're like roasting marshmallows at at a fire pit or something. It's very nice and cute. And so then I think for some reason, I think it's because she says that she has to go pee or something like that. She's like, oh, TMI, sorry. And he's like, it's okay, don't worry. Anyway, so then what ends up happening is that Kate goes back to the Jeep, I guess, that they drove in, and she's just like, oh God, I'm in over my head. And Beth is like coming to her rescue a little bit, and she's like, what are you doing? Like, and she's just like, oh, I don't really know. Like, what ends up happening is that like Beth and Kate end up in the Jeep together, right? John's Jeep. She's like, I think like he wants to kiss me, and like I haven't really had anyone kiss me before. And then of course Beth teaches Kate how to kiss, because the thing about Beth in this movie is that she's supposed to be the promiscuous one, if you will. And so because of she's a vegan or something, or because she's environmentalist or whatever, I don't know. But anyway, so then of course this has to have the obligatory lesbian like little thing in here, I guess. It's not really even anything. It's very whatever. I don't know. Yeah, of course you have to have that kiss. And then of course like this creepy guy, this like young man, he's like, like, kiss her again, do it. And then they say something about like holy drama llama or something like that. I was just like, I don't think that caught on. But anyway, so what ends up happening though is that John ends up coming back to the Jeep, and then of course like Beth is all like, oh shit, I gotta go hide, but he doesn't see her. And so John gets in the truck to like go and take Kate home or whatever. And he drives Kate home, and then of course like Beth is in the back seat like under a hoodie or something. She's like, oh no, like I can't let him know I'm here. And then of course like Carrie and Heather, they're like, they're like, oh my God, Beth's in the truck. Beth is still in the truck. And Carrie says like slut in truck. And so she has to like, they're having to like kind of trail them a little bit. In the meantime, I think they have this thing where like, they're talking to one another. This is where Kate says something about like, they're talking about like music. John asks like, what kind of music do you like? And then she's like, good music. And then saying something about like, Kate says something like, well, if I told you, I'd have to kill you or something. And so anyway, he starts playing Elvis Costello, which I think was like, it's an artist that Kate likes. And so she's like, it's okay, Anyway, so he ends up driving Kate home and they're back to where she's at. And then he walks her to the door and he decides not to kiss her because he wants everything to go well. He doesn't want to mess anything up by going too fast. So he just wants to drop her off at the door. And then Kate decides that she's going to actually kiss him. And that's what ends up happening with that. Then the sprinklers go off and then they end up actually getting to the door and then they kiss actually more. But then of course what ends up happening is because they're wet because of the sprinklers, the camera that is in her bra is like starting to malfunction and short circuit. So it's like sparking and like, zapping her. And so she's like, I gotta go. And so she goes into her house. And then in this meantime, while they're doing this, like, because I think that's what Kate's trying to do is trying to distract John from leaving because because Beth is still trying to get away, but she's like stuck on his Jeep or something. So Kate's trying to buy her some time so that she can leave and escape. And then, of course, we find out that Beth actually had ripped her skirt, and she was like, I'm not even with the guy, and he gets me out of my skirt, or whatever. And so the three girls all end up getting back together. They leave, and then John leaves with his Jeep, and like literally Beth's skirt is like on his tire or something, which I don't know how he didn't end up seeing that at some point, but oh well. Anyway, so then Kate and her mom, after this date, they're talking a little bit, and like I believe it is that like it's that moment of like the mom talking to the daughter about like, who are you now? Like, a month ago you wouldn't even liked you. And, of course, like Kate's all like, well, a month ago I wasn't anybody and now I'm somebody, And then, of course, like Lori's all like, well, don't forget who you are, and but Kate kind of reads her mom a little bit too, because, she's talking about how like, Mom, I come to you for a lot of different things, but this is not something I would necessarily come to you for, because of how her relationships have been in the past and all that. But anyway, so then I say we have our sappy teen movie moment, which is what I was just talking about with the mom and Kate and everything. The girls are gaming, so they're all like together and they're playing like Tony Hawk Pro Skater or something, and also have like a pizza and stuff, as you do. And anyway, so they fuck with John because John is like outside. I guess this is another night or something, but he's outside in his Jeep, like across the street from where Kate lives, and he calls her, and they're like fucking with him a little bit because they're saying, oh, there's some perv outside. I think we just need to call the cops or something. He's like in a Jeep or something. And what ends up happening is he's like, oh no, like I have to like get out of here. So he like backs his car up into some trash cans and then he leaves. And again, they're just kind of messing with him a little bit too. But then we have this other part where like, okay, they're going to have another date and they decide to do that. And then John takes Kate. So she's being taken to this restaurant that I think she works at, whatever. But they're not going to the restaurant. Instead, he ends up taking her out on a boat, which is called Fast Break, I think it was. And so the girls the other girls are like following them and trailing them a little bit. And so, yeah, Kate gets taken out on the boat, and then the other girls who are following them end up trailing them, and they're like, I never got on the boat. Did you ever get on the boat? And like, I was never taken out on the boat. And so then so the other girls, they get into this motorboat to like try to trail them, and then they're like, they're just like, can this move any faster? Like whatever. It's very funny. These girls have really good chemistry, I think. They're very funny with each other. And anyway, so then what ends up happening is that one of them, I think it's Beth or somebody, or it's Heather, who like tries to like, because it ends up stalling out or whatever, and then she tries to like make the motor go again, but then the motor falls into the water, and so they don't have any way of actually getting there, and they're just stranded now, and then they're just kind of left there. But I was just like, oh my God, this is like so stupid hilarious. It's kind of funny. That part's like funny to me because I'm just like, they have some fun comedic moments of just like being with each other. But you see Kate and John are on the boat together, and, you know, John's just trying to like be charming, and he is actually being charming in some way, which is kind of fun. You know, again, he's still kind of a, you know, he's a weird character, but like, you know, he is actually like putting on the moves and like trying to really, and Kate's even talking about how like, you know, all this stuff like that I was thinking before or whatever, like now it's kind of all up in the air, because this, I think, is the point where you're seeing that she's kind of falling for him more so. And funny enough, that's also what happens in this next scene where the girls and Kate, they get together after Kate has been out on the boat. And so this is where they come to like, you know, oh, like, I know that look, like you're falling for him. You're in love with him. Be like, don't let yourself fall too hard. Like, because, you know, we've all been there. Like, you know, it's not real, Kate. You're not actually dating him. So what ends up happening is that in some way, somehow, Carrie decides that, you know, she needs to figure out like what John actually is thinking. Like, you know, if he's really falling for Kate or whatever, but like, Carrie decides, like, all right, I'm going to go behind enemy lines. And so she scopes out the men's locker room. And so she's, like, hiding in a locker or something there with her little, like, DV camera or some shit like that back from 2006. And she's just like, I'm reporting behind enemy lines. I think Arielle Kebbel does a great job in this movie. I think she's very funny. And so I think she's great. But we see the guys, these basketball guys, they're coming back from a practice, I guess. You also just see them doing gross boy things, like, you know, making fart sounds with like their with their actual ass, I guess, but then also with like their armpits and shit. And then I just have my notes that she sees how gross men are, right? Instead of just like literal farting, but like also just like they're talking about how like the men are talking about how like, you know, you're telling me you haven't tapped, you know, Kate yet, blah, 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 and whatever. And I think John's even saying like, you know, boys, you know, like you don't just pop a Bordeaux 82 just because it's on your shelf, you know, and he's talking about this away game because that's been also brought up earlier as well by, I think, Carrie. She did bring this up of like, you know, the best way to, you know, try to take him down is at the away game that we're going to be doing, right? But he mentions something about this away game where, you know, let's just say I'm going to be scoring more than baskets at this away game. And so Carrie then gets this on film and she's just like, got it. Awesome. All right. So then, we then see that, you know, all right, we have that kind of tied up a little bit where, you know, you see how gross men are. And then also Carrie has that for later. But then Kate and Scott, they're back in chem class now because, of course, they were lab partners back before. But now Scott has gotten all weird and distant with Kate because now they're not lab partners or whatever. And so they're getting all weird, you know, he's being all weird and distanced with her or whatever. But then you have a scene after this is where Kate and her mom are talking. And I believe this is the scene where Kate is talking to her mom because her mom is going out on this date with this pilot, and because she's on her way out to the away game she's going to go to. And so she has this whole moment with her mom where she's talking about like, you know, it's no wonder I don't know how a functional relationships works because I've never seen one, you know, and of course because Lori doesn't really like how Kate has, you know, kind of what she's turned into or whatever. And so again, this is just like Kate reading her mom for how her relationships have been and all of that. And I like how, because the pilot's there and then, you know, Kate's like, really, Mom? Like, are you kidding me? Like, are you really going to go out with Skip again? Be like, don't call him Skip. But she does say something to the pilot where she's like, don't forget to lock the front door when you sneak out, which I thought was very good. And so she's leaving, you know, Kate leaves for the away game she's going to go to. So then you have, the actual hotel after the away game that they've had, because the away game they actually won, I guess is what I gathered. Anyway, so then they're in their rooms. So like, you know, they somehow all just end up in the same room, of course. So because I guess Kate and Heather would be there, but like the other two just came as well. But anyway, so then they're in the hotel after the away game, and the girls end up showing Kate the video that John said, and so this kind of puts some fire under her of being like, oh well, if that's what he thinks, like, you know, let's play him his own game. And so what ends up happening is they have Kate go in the bathroom and put on this like lingerie, and so now Kate is suddenly hot apparently now, because they're just like, you really need to wear underwear more at school, oh my god, you look so good. And so what ends up happening is that Kate then goes and video chats John, like John's friend Tommy or something, played by Fatso Fasano or something. He John's like, you know, all right, get out of here. Like, I gotta talk to Kate, you know. And so what ends up happening is like Kate is like talking to John, but she's being fed what to say from the other girls that are off screen or that are off the camera screen. And so then they're like, telling him pretty much like, you know, I got you a present. And like, you know, what ends up happening is that Kate has John wear this skimpy outfit because she's like, well, if you just want to come over to my room, I'm like 3 rooms down from you. If you want to, like, you can't go out in the hallway because the coach is out there, but you know, if you like go on the balconies, I'm you know, you can slide over and we can do a little something, you know. And pretty much talking about like, you know, she's like kind of flirting with him and seducing him in a way as she's supposed to do, because, you know, again, he thinks he's going to score, but, you know, she wants to be able to kind of pull that out from under him. So then John puts on the skimpy underwear, which I think he looks great in, and he goes down to the room that he's told to go to. He like scales the balconies and just like goes and gets in this room that's like dark. So he then gets in the bed in this like little thong underwear thing, and we end up finding out that actually this is Coach Williams is who it is. Coach Williams, this is their room, and then you know, of course, she like takes him by the ear. She like knocks on the coach's door, and she's like, I believe this belongs to you. And so John is humiliated in front of everyone, which is really what the girls wanted at this point. But then he ends up turning lemons into lemonade, because when they get back to school, they think like, you know, okay, yeah, we really did something for him. Like, we really messed his life up again. But then it ends up being that like he ends up wearing this thong underwear again. This is supposed to be something that embarrasses him, but then wearing this thong, and he's like turning it into something where it's like, you know, it's breezy, you know, and you could really move around. Of course, he makes like a basket where like he like literally is doing gymnastics or some shit. It's crazy. But yeah, I mean, like, you know. And then you see that everybody else is like, all these other guys are wearing these thongs as well, which is just really silly and stupid. Which I just think is like really, really hilarious in a weird way. But anyway, so then after all of this, John is talking to Kate, and what ends up happening is, because she says something to him where she's like, oh, so you don't want to pop me like a 82 Bordeaux or whatever? And he's like, where'd you hear that from? But it ends up happening though, like John is like really interested in Kate and he wants to be with her. What ends up happening is he gives her his watch, and that's like a really big step. And he literally asks like for Kate to be his girlfriend, which is a big deal and really kind of like what they wanted in a way. That's kind of what the girls wanted to like get to that point. But now it's like, you know, we got to like now tear him down, and we're coming like to the like halfway point of this movie, or like we're like 75% done. But Kate and Scott, they're talking a little bit as well, because now it's all hitting Kate at the same time of like, you know, oh, this guy just asked me to be his girlfriend, but like, here's this, This is the moment where I believe Scott, because he's like not really in this movie a whole lot at all, but like Scott reads Kate pretty much, because like, you know, he's talking about how like, you know, the reason that like he wants to be your girlfriend is because like he thinks that this is the most honest relationship he's had, and you know, and so yeah, maybe he did do all that stuff like beforehand, but you know, he's John Tucker, like what do you want, like, you know, of course he did that. what kind of person would do that, you know? And he's reading her a little bit because he's like, yeah, but this is what you did. Like, you also have pretended this whole time to, like, you know, get back at this guy. You've pretended all this time. So that's where they're trying to get a little bit deep. I don't think it completely gets that deep, honestly, but this is the moment where they're trying to kind of have that as well. But then Kate and the mom, because there's the whole thing of, like, you know, the friends are like, you know, oh my God, you actually love him. Like, you know, you're either against him or you're against us. You're either against him or you're against us. And so then Kate and mom, they have their little heart to heart that they have, because of course they have to have that, where Kate's just like, I don't know where anything is anymore. I'm in this fake relationship. These people aren't even really my friends, I guess. Da 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 da. But they have this little heart to heart. And Lori, the mom, is like saying, you know, well, you could try being yourself for once in this whole situation and, you know, see what happens from there. And that's what Kate decides to do. She decides that she needs to stop lying. She needs to stop trying to do whatever the fuck to John Tucker. And she just has to live what's her honesty, really. So then we're at John Tucker's birthday, which is supposed to be like homecoming and prom and like all this shit. It's supposed to be like really lit, apparently. So I have in my notes, I'm like, what kind of party is this? But like, it's supposed to be like this big bumping thing. I'm like, I mean, we do get the line that he is loaded. So of course, like, his parents are able to pay for all this shit, but it's like, okay, whatever. Anyway, so then, they have like this stage with like this DJ and like everyone's having a good time or whatever. Then they have this cake for John, but it ends up having like these buxom women like pop out of it. And like, I think they're strippers. I don't know, maybe. Hey, nothing wrong with strippers. But anyway, so, yeah, they're just at this party. So, like, the three girls are at this party. I love Ashanti's hair at this party. It looks so good. It's, like, real straight and nice. Like, her hair looks really good out. Everyone's hair looks really good, but Ashanti's in this scene looks really, really good. But pretty much what happens is that Kate goes there. And, of course, John is, like, you know, he's all interested because he's like, oh, yay, girlfriend. But then she reveals the truth of all of this, because what was happening was that I think Carrie gave Tommy or whatever, the guy DJing, gives him the video to play, because again, the whole point is that like they're trying to humiliate John Tucker, but then like Kate is like, you know, all right, fuck this, like I can't do that anymore, and she reveals the whole truth of like, hey, look, like, you know, we did all of this to like get back at you, and like we've all been working together to try to, you know, what is it? We've pretty much done this to get back at you and all of that. And you know what? I'm just now needing to like kind of lay it out in the open now. And that's pretty much where it comes at. And then, so it's them. And then, you know, I think somebody like, because they're trying to have a moment, like Kate's just like, hey, Kate. And then she's like, yeah. And then someone like throws a drink at her or something. And then the other girls get up there and they're like, you know, okay, so she lied. Like, it's saying you haven't lied before. And then again, people like throw drinks at them again. And then John has to get on the fucking mic and he has to be like, listen, all of this is wrong. What these girls did was wrong, but you know what? What I also did was wrong as well. And so they have this whole thing. And then, of course, like, there's this guy at the party who, by the way, is played by this guy, Greg Sipes, who is a voice actor. He is mostly known as Beast Boy from Teen Titans, in every iteration of Teen Titans. But he's also been, like, other voices as well. He has a podcast with Tara Strong called The Ship It Show, which I think is really fun. You should go watch. But, like, yeah, he's in this movie randomly. It's funny because you can hear his Beast Boy voice because that's just, like, kind of his normal voice, honestly. He doesn't look anything like that now, but yeah, anyway. But because he's the guy who says, like, you know, there's nothing wrong with hooking up with the hottest girls in school or whatever. And so then we end up having this like end where it's like this cake fight or whatever. And I guess the whole point is to be like, you know, that like, well, what John has done, I don't really know what the ending message of this movie is supposed to be. Like, it's supposed to be like, you know, maybe there wasn't anything wrong with what he was doing or something. I don't know. Because then at the end of this movie, we have that we're back at school now, and Scott and Kate, they are talking because, you know, this is now like because John's not out of the picture for Kate and everything, because they've all come clean with everything, but she's still interested in Scott, and Scott is interested in her now and whatever. And of course the girls all say, like, oh my God, like, are you trying to get with the other Tucker and whatever. And she's just like, you know what, like, we're not going to do anything with him either. Like, I think we'll take it a day at a time with him. Right. We then end up finding out that John has a new girlfriend, but then he ends up, because he's talking about, like, we got to go into this with an open mind. And so he introduces this girl to his other girlfriend. And so he's now polyamorous, I guess, apparently, which I'm like, okay, good for him or whatever. I don't know. And so, yeah. And then we have the actual end of this movie where you have Kate and the other girls, Carrie, Heather, and Beth. They're all together, and they have this little sit down. I'm pretty sure this was a reshoot, actually, because literally, I think Brittany Snow looks a little bit different than she did in the beginning or in the rest of the movie. But I'm sure this was like kind of a reshot ending or something. And so, yeah, like they talk about, like, and the girl that, made John Tucker fall in love, well, now she's a legend. And that's kind of how this movie ends, pretty much. And then we have like these little bumpers where there's the one bumper where it's like the teachers, the male teachers of this school are now all wearing thongs because of John Tucker, apparently, and they're just like late to the party or whatever. And then you have this other bumper as well, like that's right after some of the credits, where it's actually these like very very stereotypical Japanese ladies who are literally in geisha wear, who are on their cell phones or something that they have, and they see the there was a photo of when John was wearing the thong underwear or whatever, and one of them literally says something like "Holy Dama Lama" or something, and then it's like literally the end credits of this movie. All right. And then I guess that's the end of John Tucker Must Die. So if you couldn't already tell from just my like confused demeanor during the end of the movie of my plot summary. Yeah. So that's the end of this movie. I don't really know what the end of the movie is supposed to be, honestly. The message of it, like maybe it's supposed to be like, yeah, let these girls get back at this guy. And then, but it ends up being that like, I don't really know somebody tell me, I guess, if you want, because I feel like this movie is something where I was like, okay, so he ends up just embracing the fact that he wants to be with more than one person, I guess, and he's living his truth with that. Okay, I guess. All right. I'll maybe buy a little bit of it, but I think this film is one where, I mean, it's definitely squarely in 2006 for sure. There's that, but then also just like, yeah, I think, like I said earlier, I think it's cool that it was a female director, Betty Thomas, but it was written by a dude, and I mean, I think like it just maybe wasn't written as good as it could have been. I also think, like I said in my plot a little bit, I do think it would have been maybe a little bit more interesting if it was in college or something, because it just feels weird with like some of the stuff that they did in this movie, and I think it would have worked a little bit better if these were college age people, really. Maybe some of it would have been lost or whatever, but I don't know. Like, again, I think this is a teen movie that it's a 2000s teen movie, and it was kind of a mixed bag at the time, but it was a movie that they were trying to make because, like, ooh, let's get these stars of right now and let's put them in somewhere or whatever and see what happens. And so I think that's really what this movie is. And for some folks, it is this cult classic of a film because it's very much it is a female directed movie. It's a movie that's about girls in a way. And I don't think it has a huge, I don't know how much of a feminist message it has that is like a positive one. I don't know, but again, I think I have seen it classified as being kind of like trashy fun, if you will, using that term, but like I could see a little bit of it, I guess. I mean, again, I think this movie is a little flawed in a way, but I think it's a fun little kind of watch if you don't take it too seriously. I think I gave it like a 2.5 on Letterboxd or something. I'm not amazed by it, but I'm also like not thinking it's the worst thing out there, but it's not anything to write home about. So But if you do want to watch this movie at all, it was on Stars for a while, but it is on Hulu right now. That's where I watched it. So yeah, pull up and watch it. I think it's a fun little weird time capsule of 2006, and seeing people like Penn Badgley and Brittany Snow and these people who were big stars at the time, you know, and are still stars in their own right, really. It's cool to kind of see their early work and just have fun with it. So yeah, go out there and get yourself some John Tucker, if you will. I will also never understand this title, really, of like John Tucker Must Die. Like, why did they name it this? But okay. But yeah, so go watch it if you want. And, you know, if you want to have a fun little 2000s teen time, like, I don't know, just do yourself a favor and watch it. It might be fun for you if you like it. As always, if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can do so at cultcinemacircle@gmail.com. If you'd like to give any movie recommendations, give feedback on the show, or if you'd just like to say hey, I'm open to all of it. You can also follow the show on Instagram at Cult Cinema Circle and on Twitter at Cult Cinecircle. I tend to announce the movies that I'm going to be covering and just interact with people on there if they want. You can also follow me on Letterboxd at Jesse, Jesse, Kremp, Kremp, all one word. On that platform, I tend to log the movies that I watch. I write little stupid reviews about them and just general foolishness over there. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast on your podcatcher of choice, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm pretty much on all of them. Be sure to leave 5 stars and a 1 to 2 sentence review about the show so we can grow the audience and then just spread the love all around. Be sure to tune in next week to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast, where I'll be covering 1996's Wish Upon a Star. A younger sister wishes to switch places with her popular older sister, and the two bickering siblings awaken to find the wish has come true. As always, thank you for taking the time to listen to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast, and remember, John Tucker, there's only one guy out there for me, but you are not him. Take care. Bye.